What's up, wrestling fans? Welcome to episode number 289 of the Smark Smack Talk podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango, and this is the Hot Tags edition of the week, where I'm going to be breaking down some of the current events, rumors, news, gossip, and everything else that went down over the past couple of days in the world of professional wrestling. Pretty simple, right? Let's start diving right into things here. Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax are going to be joining the Total Divas cast, but they're going to be losing Renee Young. Well, the interesting things I find here, of course, being somebody who does not watch Total Divas anymore, I watched it for a couple of seasons and I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to get myself cut off on that kind of thing. I think that Renee Young, for what I had seen of little bits and pieces here and there, was kind of interesting, but not somebody that's like needed as much as, say, the Bella Twins or so. It's pretty much a Bella Twins centered show. Not as much as Total Bellas, but you know what I mean. Those are the two main ones that if they were to lose those two, I think that the actual ratings would change. Even Marie, I think, is a bigger story of her not being in there, at least as far as like the show will go. Not a big story when it comes to we didn't see that coming, because we've been seeing that coming a mile away now. And Paige doesn't seem like she's necessarily going to be a part of this either. But Renee Young is somebody that she was only really part of the main cast last season, if I remember correctly. So if they drop her for a season or something like that, then I don't think that's going to make a big deal. But they replace her and even Marie and possibly Paige, I don't know, with Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax. And that's actually kind of interesting because Alexa Bliss is at a point in her career right now where she is doing a lot of great things for her career. I mean, she's already a 3-time women's champion. Even tonight on Monday Night Raw, it hit me how crazy that is to a certain extent because Mickie James came out and she's like, yeah, well, I'm a 6-time. You only won 3 more titles than her and you had that long of a career and all that? That's what the brand split kind of does every once in a while, though, so that's not necessarily the case. But this is still a good move for her career in the sense that other people might not be as familiar with her if they only watched SmackDown and, you know, maybe they didn't watch it when she was around as the champion. Maybe some people are only into Total Divas and they're not as much into WWE. Like, I got a buddy whose wife watches Total Divas, but she doesn't watch WWE. So she can watch somebody like Alexa Bliss on the show, or Nia Jax for that matter, and start to kind of get some more characters and kind of get reacquainted with like some of the other people that are in the company and all that. So it's always good to change things up a little bit. And this is really good for Nia Jax too, because not only is Alexa Bliss just banging on all cylinders, and she seems to be somebody who really knows her character and really can kind of like be interesting in that regard, Nia Jax is almost like an unknown. We don't really know too much about her, and it seems from what I have seen that she's a very different person behind the scenes than what her character is. So I think that that's going to be kind of interesting to see. Some people have like their opinions of what they expect Nia Jax to be, and she isn't. Now, Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax are really, really good friends. So I'm assuming that this is kind of like a package deal a little bit. Sort of like the 2 hijinks that they can get together, that kind of thing. Sasha Banks and Bayley, Charlotte and Becky Lynch, Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax. There's some duos that we've seen over the years that have kind of been like that. And I would be kind of interested in it if I didn't already know that I don't like the Total Divas show because I don't like reality shows. And I know I rag on Nia Jax a whole lot, but I would actually kind of be interested to see what Nia Jax has to bring to the table. Oh, and you know what? This is also a good thing for Buddy Murphy, oddly enough, because he's with Alexa Bliss, so he's been really MIA. And he'll actually be making an appearance on something. People might get a little bit more invested in him. So that's a positive thing for Buddy Murphy's career as well. He'll get a little bit of a boost. So, you know what? I think that this is probably a good thing in the long run. I'm not going to be watching Total Divas, so I'm not going to know if they're like entertaining or not, or if they fill the void, or, you know, whatever the case may be like that is. But it is something that at least is kind of on the positive side of things. It's not like they're losing Eva Marie, potentially Paige, and Renee Young, and they're going to be getting, say, I don't know, like, who do they have that really is kind of like bland and uninteresting or something? Like a second Natty. You know what I mean? So keep that all in mind. If you are a fan of Total Divas, that's what you're going to be getting next season. And with all the stories I'm going to be talking about here, let me know what you think in the comments below. Just do a little timestamp or, actually say something that I know, like we're referencing and stuff like that. So keep that in mind, too. But let's move on to another story here. This is just a kind of little side thing. Nothing big. But there were rumors going around that the reason why TJ Perkins changed from TJ Perkins to TJP was that Vince McMahon hates the restaurant Perkins. Well, TJP clarified by saying, actually, I just asked to be called TJP, not very complicated. So there you go. No story here. I found it funny, though. Plus, doesn't TJP suit him better now that he's a heel? Like, what a douchebag, dabbing, calling himself TJP. I think that it works, Another quick story here. Some congratulations for NXT stars Montez Ford and Bianca Blair. They are apparently engaged now, so that's another positive. Had a couple people give birth to some kids the other day. Well, not necessarily like they gave birth to some kids, but Matt Hardy and Mustafa Ali both had kids. So, now we got a wedding in the plan for NXT stars and stuff like that, and that's kind of interesting. Let's move to 205 Live talk. There are plans to use more women on 205 Live, and that is, at least in their minds, going to help boost the ratings and get people watching. They did that a little bit with Sasha Banks, but I don't know. Is that really a smart idea? I don't really think it's going to work. We've had Alicia Fox on there for a while, and I like Alicia Fox a lot more than most people do. But I don't think people are really tuning in to check out Alicia Fox. And I don't think that really a lot of people would tune in here and there to see Sasha Banks or Bayley or Charlotte or any kind of stuff like that. The women's segments have garnered much more respect and attention over the past 2 years, especially. But they're still not like go-to ratings grabbers, Hell, popular people like Sami Zayn and Finn Balor and whatnot aren't even in that category. I mean, certain reports are always just talking about only John Cena and Randy Orton and Roman Reigns and those kind of top people like Brock Lesnar, that those are the ones that actually influence normal ratings, not if they're like, I mean, imagine bringing Sasha Banks on for more quick appearances on 205 Live. Is that going to convince you to watch it if you're not watching 205 Live? Probably not. I don't know. It's worth a try, right? If it doesn't work, they try it for a couple of weeks and there's no little uptick in the numbers, then they stop doing it, It's not like a permanent change. I don't think it's going to work. I hope it does, though, because I want more people to watch 205 Live, because the more people that watch 205 Live, the better 205 Live gets, at least in theory, because they put more effort into it. And lately, they have not been putting any effort into that show. That has been predominantly just, let's have the same 4 feuds every single week. Let's have Mustafa Ali versus Drew Gulak, or versus like Tony Nese, and then Drew Gulak interferes. And then let's have Neville talk to Austin Aries or TJP or whatever. Cut the same promo all the time. Now Cedric Alexander's back, so that's kind of interesting. But like, we haven't even seen a good portion of these people for a while. And we don't know what's happening with, like, Lindsay Dorado's injury, or why they haven't done anything with Grand Metalik, or I haven't seen, like, jack shit from Ho-Ho Loon. He's supposed to be part of this, right? Even Oney Lorcan popped up a little bit here and there, but, like, he's still just in NXT, so I don't know. More people watching 205 Live is better, though. So hopefully this does do actually something for that. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. Whatever. Speaking of 205 Live, though, Austin Aries is possibly taking time off to heal from nagging injuries. Possibly not. He had sort of indicated that, and then in another interview said that it was sort of taken out of context, and that he's not necessarily doing that because everybody is always working with, like, some kind of injuries, and that maybe it was just sort of like people jumping to some conclusions and stuff like that, but it kind of seems like that's the case, doesn't it? He hasn't been on for like 2 weeks or so, and it looked like they kind of wrote him off with like that knee injury sort of thing, and I wouldn't put it past him. And you know what? If he's got some injuries, take a little time off. They've got other people that can fill in that spot. I'm not really all that interested in seeing Austin Aries versus Neville again. So if that's going to be the way to heal him up and to prevent them from repeating themselves a little bit more, then all the better. Let's bounce to a random thing here. WWE has been holding meetings to address some cybersecurity threats. Like the photo leaks and the idea that people might be able to get access to your social media accounts and take over your Twitter and different things like that. One of the funny things that I found at this report was the idea that they told them, don't accept USB flash drives, even from beautiful women promising nudes. Apparently that's happened before, where it's just sort of like, here's a flash drive of nude pictures of me, and people will be like, thanks, and then like plug it into their computer, and it's got some spyware on it, whatever like that. And I kind of find it funny that that would be like a modus operandi when it comes to that, because I can understand why it could work in theory, because beautiful women can control the world, it seems. But I also kind of funny that it's just like these WWE talent kind of going, like, they can kind of get like a lot of women if they really, really wanted to, especially the ones that are like really good looking guys, like a Randy Orton goes to a fucking bar. He's married now, but let's assume that he's not a cheating asshole. And, back in the day when he was single and stuff, it's like, all right, so you're married. I'm not doing that. What am I botching all over the place here for? So you're a single guy. You're fit. You are famous. You are wealthy. You constantly have people just lavishing you with adoration. So you've got confidence up the fucking ass. You mean to tell me you're not going to be able to just go to a fucking bar and pick up a bunch of chicks? No, that's of course the case. So it's like, it's pretty interesting that somebody might be like, here, I just happen to carry around a USB flash drive of fucking porn of myself on there. It's like, that's so weird. Instead of just being like, yo, why don't you just text me some selfies or stuff? Like, that's what Snapchat's for, people. Come on. But I thought that was kind of funny. It seems like they are doing this because of all the fappening leaks, and most of those fappening leaks were from a hell of a long time ago. So if they have had more leaks over the course of however much that time was, they're going to come out eventually at some point down the line, and kind of nothing you can do about it. It's just try not to give people access to your phones, and try not to keep things on the iCloud, and sometimes you're going to get fucked over. It's just the case. It sucks for those people, but hey, what can you do? What else do we have here? Bray Wyatt's wife is filing for divorce after accusing him of having an affair with JoJo, which, according to his representatives, is all bullshit, that she's just kind of soiling his name. From her side of things, it's totally true, and he's getting a little bit of that ass that we see JoJo flaunting every single week on Instagram, which is just insane. And, yeah, that sucks. Speaking of the whole idea of somebody being a cheating asshole, if you've got a wife and kids and you cheat on them, that's a dick move, dude. Now, of course, I don't know if his wife is like the worst wife in the world or something like that, but then that's why he should file for divorce instead. And I don't know, the whole situation could be hearsay, and left and right is wrong, and up and down is wrong, and, you never know who to trust in these kind of things, especially because this is a behind-the-scenes, behind closed doors type of matter. It's not even like WWE behind the scenes. This is like the level of access beyond WWE behind the scenes, like that opening of Get Smart where you're walking through the multiple doors and stuff like that. So we don't really have a clue what Bray Wyatt's personal life is like, so we can't really judge the guy all that much. But if he is having an affair with JoJo, let's just say hypothetically, I would have never seen that couple happening. JoJo apparently had some kind of thing with Vader's kid, and I don't really know all that much about him, but I kind of think that he would have been a little bit more her speed, but I would have thought JoJo would have gone for somebody, I don't know, maybe a little bit like more of like the macho type. Like Bray Wyatt's not really one of those like muscular macho type of guys, like a Cesaro, or, well, we know that Cesaro's with Sarah Amato, but let's just say in general, I don't know, maybe like maybe like a Tony Nese, or maybe like Cedric Alexander, or maybe well, not Kofi, not Xavier. They're with people. Yeah, I don't know, but Damn, now I'm like going through the roster in my brain. I'm trying to think of like who on Monday Night Raw would she have access to that she would probably end up dating. Let me see. Let me bring up the roster list. So if we're limiting ourselves to Monday Night Raw, let's just go ahead and do that. Apollo Crews, nah, I don't see her going with Apollo Crews. Not necessarily. He seems a little... Well, I think he's kind of with somebody too, or whatever. I don't follow all the gossip 100%, so I might be wrong about some of this crap, but... Braun Strowman, no. Cesaro, possibly. Darren Young, of course, no. Maybe somebody like an Elias Sampson. Maybe. Maybe even a little bit of like a Dash Wilder I could see, but wouldn't have gone with Bray Wyatt, that's for sure. So that's kind of interesting. We got another one here with, speaking of Monday Night Raw, Booker T is possibly going to be replacing David Otunga on commentary permanently. The original idea was that Otunga was going to move over and switch spots with Byron Saxton. And when they did that with the Superstar Shakeup, Otunga was also filming a movie at the time, so Booker T took his spot. And I, from the start, said I like that idea better because I hate David Otunga on commentary. And according to these reports, which may or may not be true, you always got to take things with a grain of salt. Everybody in WWE recognizes that Booker T is better as well. Now, Booker T is somebody who, if you go back into the archives of this show, you will see me make fun of Booker T on commentary. And he is still as ridiculous on commentary. But at least that's fun. David Otunga is bad on commentary, and it's boring. So if I'm going to have somebody who's not really the next JR or the next Bobby Heenan, I at least would rather have somebody who's entertaining in like a ridiculous way than to have somebody who's just flat out boring. You give me, say, the difference between a Byron Saxton, who I don't really like all that much, but he's a little bit on the goofier side, or a Todd Grisham. I'm going Byron Saxton. There's, differences when it comes to that stuff. And Booker T and David Otunga, I think it's an easy call. You keep Booker T. If he is willing to do it and you're willing to keep him and you don't have anybody else to fill that spot instead, put David Otunga somewhere else in the company or just let him go. He really doesn't need to be there anymore. If he wants to work in the legal department, he can work in the legal department. If he is like an ambassador role, have him do, signings and stuff like that. Like, he's just not somebody that I think is very engaging on the mic, whether it's like a panelist or commentary or in-ring character or any of that kind of stuff. He's just not somebody that I find interesting. So, whatever. Let's talk about a little bit of interviews going on here. We had some stuff pop up on the WWE Network tonight. Tonight, of course, being right now it's the 13th of June, but that's because it's like 1 a.m. when I'm recording this. But, the previous night, Monday Night Raw, afterward we had Bring It to the Table, and we also had an interview from a little portion of Bring It to the Table was a section of the interview that you could just check out the full interview itself. Reborn by Fate, the Hardy Boys. And between those two, I think it's kind of worth watching both of them if you have the time. More so Bring It to the Table. I like Bring It to the Table a lot, and I always get something out of it. Whether it's kind of like a little bit of the insight of how they're thinking, maybe how they're approaching certain topics, that kind of thing. I like that backstage, behind the scenes, sort of pull the curtain type of thing. And if you don't, then maybe you don't really want to check that out or something like that. But the This Is Your Life segment, they were running down that, saying that it was awful and everything. And JBL brought up a good point. He said, yeah, you know what? It was a really, really awful segment, but sometimes that doesn't really hurt careers all that much. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And those two are going to bounce back from it, and I'm sure that they will too. I mean, they aren't going to bounce back from it as quickly as possible if they keep fucking bringing it up, that's for sure. But they did a quick reference to how the Great Balls of Fire logo looks like a dick. They didn't really, really say it, but it was just sort of like, hey, that logo kind of looks like something, like that kind of thing. And they addressed the dive situation that was happening a while back with Randy Orton and Bubba Ray Dudley and a couple other people, where they were kind of coming at this from two angles. JBL was saying that it's indicative of somebody who can't work. they do a bunch of flips because they're that sort of glorified stuntman thing with the Ric Flair and Mick Foley kind of aspect, but minus necessarily the hardcore stuff. And it's just, they do flippy stuff because they can't actually work in the ring. Corey Graves acknowledged that a lot of those old matches that people go like, that was a classic and all that, are boring as hell nowadays. So I'm kind of in the middle of the two of them. I think that there's credence to both. I can't watch old wrestling. No matter how much I hear from Jim Ross about how Danny Hodge was great and Hackenschmidt and early Harley Race and all that other kind of stuff, I've tried so many times to watch old school wrestling, and I just find it so boring. Not even like where I have my preferences, where say like I'm a big fan of Star Wars. There's 7 main Star Wars movies now, 8 if you count Rogue One. So out of all those movies, I'm not going to watch every single one of them exactly the same. My favorites are the original Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. But I can watch Empire Strikes Back a hell of a lot more than I can watch, say, even Return of the Jedi. The first half of Return of the Jedi is fucking boring. But just because something that you like doesn't mean it's necessarily, like you got to like every single aspect of it. And when you get to like the old wrestling stuff, it's like I want to appreciate that, but man, I can't watch it. I can watch any of the Star Wars movies and I can get some kind of enjoyment out of them. I can't watch any wrestling match or any era of wrestling and get enjoyment out of it. There's a lot of stuff from the old things that I just don't find all that fun. And to be fair, there's a lot of the flippy stuff that I don't find all that interesting either. Like, I'll watch an ROH match and every once in a while, and I'm hearing everybody chant, holy shit, and, this is awesome, and match of the year, and whatever like that. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what, that dive thing's really true. The whole, like, let's do the lockup, and let's do a couple flips, and have a stare off, and then it's kind of the same pattern in a lot of that stuff. So I agree with both sides a little bit. I think JBL is a little bit too stuck in the old ways, and that kind of hurts him. But I think that Corey Graves is more on my side, where it's sort of like, yeah, some of the flippy stuff's really, that's what's fun about that kind of stuff, Like, I really don't want to watch a match where people are just doing headlocks and stuff. No matter how much it's like, oh, these two are just, they're locked up because their strengths are matched. Still kind of boring. Thoughts on the Hardy Boys interview, by the way? Not too much to come out of that with. They were a little bit hush on the broken characters, which is understandable because it's still in litigation and everything. But the most important thing that I found out was Jeff Hardy said on his bucket list, his main thing is he wants to fight in a Hell in a Cell match. And I was just thinking to myself, he's never had a Hell in a Cell match? Really? It seems like he should have at this point, right? He went through a long, long career in WWE. You would have thought they would have had at least one Hell in a Cell match at some point, especially in like that 07 range where they were doing still doing a lot of them, and he was still at the top of the company and stuff. I thought that there was a Jeff Hardy and CM Punk Hell in a Cell, but I guess I'm wrong, because he would know more than I would, right? Unless he did have a Hell in a Cell, and he just doesn't remember it because he got too banged up or something like that, but I don't remember it for sure anyway either. Our second to last story here is that there were concept art images put up online over the past couple of days of a WWE amusement park. Let's get into this a little bit. A design company called Forek did a presentation of WWE branded attractions for what could be, quote, accommodated in indoor venues as well as full-scale outdoor WWE theme park sites. Some of the ideas that were, at least in this kind of report, were an Andre the Giant themed fun house. Shouldn't that be Doink, I would think? A little bit more than Andre the Giant? I mean, I can imagine somebody just kind of pitching it and being like, what if you walked up a mirror and you looked like Andre? It's like, well, that's a normal fun house then, They said that they would have a haunted house called the House of Horrors. Fitting name, right? They would have the Undertaker and the Boogeyman. I'm assuming Kane, Papa Shango, Bray Wyatt, etc. Any of those like dark, kind of mysterious sort of characters, except for maybe not like Kevin Thorne or, some of the ones that they kind of want to sweep under the rug. I don't think that we're going to see like the zombie or the Yeti or any of that kind of stuff out there. A dark ride called Road to WrestleMania. Zero details on that. I don't really know what a dark ride necessarily is. I'm assuming it's kind of like an Epcot sort of thing. A roller coaster held up by John Cena. That's pretty bland and boring, right? It's just a regular roller coaster, but it happens to have a big John Cena that pretends to hold it up. I don't care. A drop tower ride, pretty standard. You gotta name it something like elbow drop or back body drop or something like that. A carnival style ride, maybe that's we're gonna get the doink thing. Guaranteed, no Kazarni, that's for sure. A Kuka arm style ride. I have no idea what that is, so if you do, drop a comment below and fill me in. This has also given more speculation about a physical Hall of Fame in Florida, because a lot of people have been talking about that for years and years and years, and they obviously could combine the two in like some kind of big theme park situation. Keep in mind, the material that they use in this design is clearly from a few years ago. It's got different hairstyles from people. It's got the WrestleMania 31 logo, so on and so forth. So if this idea has been as far back as that, and this is the first that we're hearing about it, that means one of two things. Either they've kept the project going, but under wraps, and it can pop up any day now with like an insane amount of information, kind of like, well, WWE theme park opening up in 2019 or something like that. Or it's effectively a dead project and it's not going to happen. So they figured, fuck it, let's just release our concept art and see, let other people see what we worked on, that kind of thing. It's interesting to note that there's a little bit of crossover with the potential of what this could be used for and the last story here. The median age of wrestling fans has apparently almost doubled. There was a study which covered 25 different sports in 2000, 2006, and 2016. Wrestling had the sharpest increase out of the 25 different sports. In 2000, the median age was 28 years old. Last year, 2016, 54. Dave Meltzer, for what it's worth, says Raw and SmackDown are still in the 40s. I don't know. That's still a big jump up. Average age 28-year-old, average age 40. That's still an increase. By not even maybe it's like 35-year-olds old now. No, that's still quite a bit. Apparently, UFC is far above WWE for younger demographics. So you can approach this from two angles. One side of the argument is that they should cater more to their market and stop the PG era stuff because it clearly isn't working to bring in kids. If you got an audience of 54-year-olds or 40-year-olds or whatever, and they are upset with the product, you want to keep them at the very least, because what they're doing isn't bringing kids in. Another side of the argument is that they should go even more hardcore PG to try to target these kids to offset it, even if that might be risky and it can alienate their current audience. I'm more of the camp that says that we should just go with a little bit more edgy. UFC is not catered to kids. So that clearly proves right there, if UFC has a higher kid demographic and WWE is trying to do little kiddie stuff and they're not getting the kids, just try to do what UFC is doing a little bit. Of course, don't get me wrong here. I don't think that we should go back to the days of choppy PP and whatnot. Although I'm certainly not going to discourage the women's division from starting to pose for Playboy again. That's, I'm cool with that one. That's something we could bring back. But I think that the idea of taking a guy like Roman Reigns or John Cena or whatever, marketing them as a top guy because he does well with kids, shoving them down the throats of the audience that clearly is not children if this is the case, and a vocal, you can't even say vocal minority if the average age is 54. That's why you get a lot of people complaining. You can't expect 40-year-olds to watch Nickelodeon and think that it's speaking to them. And you also don't make a movie like, I don't know, Steven Soderbergh's Traffic and think that it's going to be a hit with 9-year-olds. They're not going to want to watch that. And there's also a trickle-down effect, too, that needs to be considered. How do kids tend to get into sports in general? A lot of them watch it because their dads watch it. and they pick it up from that. Either it's like a replication of their dad's thing, or they just happen to be around it enough and they find it interesting, where it's just genetics, you know, that kind of thing. So if a 55-year-olds are watching WWE, then maybe their kids are too. But if the adults don't find it engaging, maybe they'll convince their son or daughter to watch something else, because there's plenty of other stuff out there on television, on the internet, on Netflix, in film, to occupy the target audience of children. And that stuff is meant specifically just for them. And it does a hell of a lot better job at grabbing their attention. The average kid is going to be much more into SpongeBob or whatever other options there are like that than the other options that aren't targeting just kids. Look at a toy commercial. Toy commercials don't work for adults. A commercial that works for adults is something like a beer commercial or food. Something where they spend their money on that kind of stuff. Kids don't spend money. Kids just want bright, loud, colorful. Bailey sells kid stuff. John Cena's bright and colorful. He sells kid stuff. WWE is predominantly a dark kind of thing. It's not dark in the sense of like, you know, people are getting murdered and stuff like that, but it's dark like the lights still are kind of dark and everything, and it's a sort of bland, kind of bleak exterior to a certain extent. It's not bright and loud and colorful in that kind of regard. I'll give you an example. I have 2 nieces and a nephew. My oldest niece loves Teen Titans Go and superheroes in general, but that's like her go-to show as one of the main shows. And she also watches Pokemon. She also watches Ben 10. She watched a Transformers thing one day when I was watching her. You know, she likes a lot of superhero stuff like that. So I put on a thing of Teen Titans Go. I'm a big superhero fan. I can get something out of that, because when they have Robin, the character Robin, reference something about Nightwing, I'm like, oh, cool, Nightwing. He's referencing Nightwing. I know this. She's watching it because it's a kids show. And they're doing little kid stuff. You know, they're like baking a birthday cake for somebody, and it's like wacky hijinks, you know, that kind of crap. But I had on Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice one time when she was over here, and she wanted nothing to do with it. She thought it was even a little bit scary. Now, she really, really likes Batman and Superman, but Teen Titans Go is catered to kids and does a better job grabbing their attention than something like Batman v Superman. Even Captain America Civil War. Now, my nephew, for instance, huge fan of Spider-Man. I had Captain America Civil War on. He didn't really want to pay that much attention to it, knowing full well that Spider-Man was in there. That's the Marvel Cinematic Universe is getting kids, but they're also not just kid stuff. So that's why they're able to get a wide range of things. WWE is trying to go in all these different directions, but they're clearly not hitting it off with kids. So you got to kind of weigh your options here. Do you go really, really targeting the kids, and you might fuck over those 40, 50, 30, whatever year olds, and then you're left with no market at all? Or do you just go, hey, we are what we are. Let's just try to make things a little bit more serious. If our audience grew up from the Attitude Era, and it's somebody like myself, now I'm going to be 30 at the end of June. First off, I'm paranoid about that because I hate the idea that I'm turning 30. I was a wrestling fan when I was a kid, and I was a wrestling fan at my hardest, other than now, when it was like 1996, 97, 98, 99. So those couple of years, I watched the shit out of wrestling, and that was part of the Attitude Era. I grew up not through like the 2000s and stuff like that, but when I got back into it in 07 or so, and kind of forced myself a little bit into it, then I kind of want something more along the lines of the new generation and the Attitude Era type of stuff. I don't want the incredibly kiddie type of stuff. And I also don't want it to be like super dark either. I kind of like a little bit of what they're doing as far as like PG stuff, but I also kind of think they're putting a little bit too much emphasis on the idea of like, hey, Roman Reigns does well with kids and we need kids and we don't have them. So let's just really push Roman Reigns then. How about you let the kids sort of get attached to some of the other characters just by default, because the kids are going to get attached to whoever. You tell them to get attached to somebody, they probably will. The adults are going to be dictating a lot of that. You get somebody to go out there like a Roman Reigns, you get a bunch of adults booing him. Some of those kids aren't going to think that it's cool to like Roman Reigns. Try to go with as many people that can cheer something as possible. Just saying. If you know your audience is fat, middle-aged women, try to target fat, middle-aged women. Don't sit there and go, yeah, but how can we get the thin surfer teenage boy audience? You're not going to. You're not going to get a young teenage boy or any guys, for the most part, to watch Hallmark Channel or the Lifetime Channel. They're probably just not going to be interested. Some of them will, of course, because there's always a little bit of overlap. There's somebody for everything, that kind of thing. But Lifetime and Hallmark, they know their target demographic. It's the Walmart soccer mom type of demographic, and they play up to that. It's the old women sitting at home watching it, so they throw a little bit of like some old religious type of stuff. Everybody is very homey. Everybody is like this old house has got so much charm and like that kind of shit. That's not for somebody like me. You want something to target somebody like me? You give me something that is a wildly different thing. Not crazy horror type of stuff where it's like a goth person would really be into it. So there's a lot of different styles and stuff. But essentially, before I stop, I got to stop rambling here. WWE clearly has doubled their average median age. And if they don't change their product, the kids aren't going to want to stick around when they get older. And then when they lose that, you also lose those people that have gone to 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Those people, you drop them off too. And then who you left with, So, that is this week's edition of the Hot Tags. I want to thank you all for listening, and I want to remind you again, drop your comments below and tell me what you thought about all these different subjects, and if any other big stories happen throughout the week, check out the comments later on, because maybe I'll put something out in there. If you think I missed something, also tell me something about what you'd like me to talk about in the comments, and I'll try to reply to that. But stay tuned for the next two things that you're going to be seeing here, the next three things, technically. The Ask Him and all the IWC outreach content is going to be coming up tomorrow. I'm going to probably try to record that tonight, actually. Then we've got the predictions for WrestleMania. Not WrestleMania. The predictions, I'm jumping ahead a couple of months here. Predictions for Money in the Bank. And then afterward, later on in this week, Sunday night, Money in the Bank is happening. So stay tuned for the live coverage on the website for that. And then, of course, the post-show recap and review podcast coming after that is done. But hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell icon notification, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and that's where you're going to get the notifications of when anything like that pops up. And until then, I will see you next time, everybody. This has been another Smark Out moment, and I'm being counted out.